Welcome back, everyone. This is Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy with the Nautilus Drydocks, and this is Logan. This is Chapter 3 of the build blog for the 1/48 scale Disney Nautilus model kit. Thanks a lot for your patience. I know it's been a long time before this chapter dropped, but we're going to get a lot done, and this is the super cool part. It's Logan's favorite part. He is actually going to be taking point on walking you through the build. I'll be chiming in and probably working on some electrical stuff as well. So let's get started.
First things first, I'm going to base it all out. Two colors I'm going to be using are a matte, this is cocoa bean, but a nice dark brown, and then a nice matte black for anywhere that you're not really going to see, but you don't want to be standing out in fluorescent white. So, I'm going to take everything outside. I'm going to get started on basing out pretty well all of the stairwell pieces in brown, as well as the walls of the wheelhouse and the pipes. So anything inside the wheelhouse, I'm going to do brown, and anything outside of the wheelhouse, I'm going to hit with a little bit of black. These are the parts that I am going to be painting brown. So this is going to be inside of the stairwells, the front of the door, the stairs, and make sure you get the right alignment on the stairs. It looks identical whichever way you have it. You have to look for the textured steps. I'm getting the outside of the hatch for the wheelhouse, and only the bottoms of the sliding door hatch. I'm getting the piping and the walls for inside the wheelhouse, but these are the only parts that I'm hitting with brown. Everything else I'm either going to be using a nice dark gray or a nice black. Got the brown on parts that need to be brown. Next up, we're going to be using the charcoal. There we go. Now, this is kind of the only segment that you need to worry about color. After this, it's kind of up to personal preference, but for this, we're kind of using the charcoal to hide some details and shadows, so we don't have these nice bright white detail pieces sitting out. So we're going to be hitting right around here, hiding all the inside of here, making it look like some nice shadow, hitting all of these parts, again, just trying to make it look a little bit darker so it doesn't stand out so much. The only exception, of course, is the wheelhouse, and because that's we're going to be dry brushing that with your choice of whatever metallic you'd like the floor grading to be, so that it looks a little bit more like open floor grading, a little bit less like a waffle. Alright, so we based everything out. The only thing that has kind of changed is I have I forgot with the stairs, you want to get the stairs in black because you want it to look like the metallic grating, similar to the floorboards of the wheelhouse, so had to go back and redo that, but just took 2 seconds. So next up, I'm going to be dry brushing over any of the metallic parts, so that's going to be, of course, the grating as mentioned, a little bit on the sides of the wheelhouse, or sides of the stairwell to the wheelhouse, as well as around the door, as well as changing the color of the valve for the door. So, adding a little bit of stuff here and there. From this point on, though, it's personal preference as to colors. I'm just going to be basically telling you what I'm going to be doing for my variation of this, but feel free to change any of the colors for whichever you feel most suits your style of Nautilus. Bit of a time skip, but I've gotten all of my pieces pre-painted because it is a bit of a pain once the parts are in to even try and paint them. So, for the stairs, rather simple, a bit like Lego. Make sure that you have the textured part of your stairs facing upward, and all you do is you just align it with the steps built into the stairwell. There we are. Once you get them on, you're going to have the top of the stairs hanging out at the very top. And what's nice about this is, once you have all the pieces together, they kind of hold themselves in place. You can just pinch it and hold it. Including with the door, once you slide them all together, you can just pinch it all in the middle and it all stays nice and still together. Makes it nice and easy to glue. Gives you a good chance to also look for any misalignments or spots where you can change the fitting. Like what I've noticed on mine is that I need to move my stairs backwards, that I can move my door down. There we go. And it's important to make sure that the door stays completely clear of the top, because you're going to have a sliding piece going right over top of it. If your door is hanging up even slightly, let's see here, this piece and its mating piece are going to be sliding directly on top of it. So if there's any chance they can catch, it's going to. And if it catches, and it just gets nasty once all that happens. But now that I've got it all nice and flush, I can flip it around. I can even press it against the table to make sure it's a perfectly flat surface. And glue on the seams. And of course, you don't want to get any glue to get in the rails. The sides of the stairwells feature some rails that a piece is going to slip into later, so anything that gets in those rails will basically completely ruin your stairwell for you. So, next up, I'm going to go ahead and do some prep work on the breathers, and I'll show you how the breathers work. Alright, so I have the breather assembly gently laid in place, more for fitment's sake than anything else, and I have all of my pieces here. Now, for the breathers, the pre-prep work was just a matter of getting the bottoms painted so that when they're open, it looks a little bit more like shadow or some grimed metal, so it doesn't stand out so much that breathers pop open, you've got some stark white, and it's nearly impossible to paint in there. I've got the breather catches, and I've got the latching slide, I suppose. Now, breathers are in. I haven't put them in permanently, I've just put them in here for fitment's sake to make sure I have the right order. There is a particular order to them. You have to make sure you have the largest leading to the smallest. The way I went and I checked that is I just took the frontmost piece, which you can identify because it's the longest, and I just laid it inside. You can see it should fill the outline when you push it in and all the way back nicely. And I just did the same following each piece, getting larger and larger. Again, making sure I push it all the way flush with the back. Once they're all in, it's a bit hard to see. Make sure I don't spill these. But they should all align nicely. That's how you know you have the right order in place. And then installation is actually quite simple. Once you have them organized like this, you make sure, flip this around because I'm right-handed, push it so that it's facing straight upward, and I like to press on the, the base and on the flanges, making sure I don't put any pressure on this thin piece because breaking a breather would be rather tragic. You just push down nice and gently until you pop a side in, and you pop the other side in. And there we go. That's one in, and you simply open that one up and follow suit with each of the rest. Alright, so a trick we found to make sure that there's not even a chance of damage is if you use a nice set of needle nose pliers, you can spread plastic apart a little bit to the point where it just goes ahead and just being a little overly cautious at the beginning to avoid any damage, but there we go. In and move. Alright, so with all of the breathers installed, there were a few tricks that we kind of remembered along the way. If you don't feel comfortable pressing straight down for fear of damage, a few things we found are you can use the needle nose pliers, as I demonstrated earlier, to try and spread and push it in. That had least damage, easiest to go in. But for the more tricky ones, which would be the very first and the very last two, you're not going to be able to spread to push your breathers in, so we use some slip jaw pliers. Now for this, you are going to want to use a rag or something on top of your breathers to make sure that the slip jaws don't damage your parts or leave any undue marks on them, but using those, we've gotten them all in and they're undamaged. So the next step is you're going to flip it on over, and you're going to install the slide, which is as simple as lining it up and dropping it in. Though, make sure you remember as I just have, that it does have a certain orientation. On one side it is flush, on the other side you have a slight gap. So you want to make sure that you keep the flush side to the far side. You simply push it on in. You're going to want to push it past being flush. Now they're all connected. Before I can demonstrate that they are effective, I want to go ahead and push the retaining slide in. This will keep the system all together. Now, if I do so very gently, it'll take a few times until they're all kind of happy with moving. So you might have to lift from a few different breathers, but they are, in fact, all synchronously moving. They're moving in sync. They work! Next step is installing the stairs that we assembled earlier and the final sliding hatch that covers the stairs and partially slides over the breathers that we installed earlier. So, luckily enough, installation of both of these are super simple. In terms of installing the sliding breathers of the two parts you have one with the two little mating dots and the sliding hatch behind it. For this, all you do is you line them up, and if you lift on the tab, the sliding dots should mate with the second piece, click together with a nice satisfying snap, and they can now, gotta wiggle it a little bit, freely slide back and forth. So we'll set that aside for now, because it's a little bit more important to install the stairs first. Now for the stairs, it's as simple as just placing it into alignment. Might be good to hold it, check from the other side, make sure that you've painted everything correctly so you don't have any glaring bald spots, but once it's in, it's as simple as just tacking it in place with a little bit of glue, and it's set. For the slidable breathers, all you need to do is hold it in proper alignment, or if you hold it straight vertical like this, you're going to be placing it such that the breathers are going in the furthest backmost slot, and the rounded nubs are going to fit into the rounded slot that you'll find just beneath it. It might give you a bit of resistance at first, so you'll have to kind of gently slide it on, push it and prod at it. Once you get it in, it's probably going to be a bit rough after you initially get the piece in, and it'll take a little bit of time of pushing the parts back and forth and making sure that all the little greeblies and paint flecks or dust and everything kind of get pushed out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and take a minute and I'm going to clean this up so it looks a little bit nicer, but if you can see here, that is about where it should end. Alright, I have gone ahead and I have installed everything for the walls and the wheelhouse. So you can see here, this is the general floor plan. Feel free to pause and take a look at where all the parts ended up, but you've got the jukebox facing perpendicular into the wheelhouse, stairs on the inside. With the stairs, it's good to know there's only really one point of contact you have, which is just the main stair touching the floor. So if you have any gel CA, it's good to just kind of goober that up. It does get rather close to your acrylic rod, so you can create a connection between the acrylic rod and the stairs. It can work out, but really as long as you have a nice big goober, it should stay in nice and fine. And the placement of everything is pretty simple. You have your rounded railing around the stairs, you have your partially curved railing right behind the steering wheel and the dive levers. Steering wheel is front and center, dive levers off to the side. All nice and simple. For the walls, there are a few things to take into consideration. Again, feel free to pause and take a look. This angled point here is going to be at the back, so it's going to clip over like so. So So this would be towards the rear of the wheelhouse. You can see here's the pipe that goes there. The pipe is separate, you have to glue that on. Everything else is attached. You might notice, if you're particularly observant, that one of these I had to clip because this previously was hitting the light mounted in the wheelhouse. So simply clipped it off. Still looks fine. I don't think anyone's going to be terribly worried that one of the struts had to be a bit shortened. This wall, however, this would be the starboard side wall. There are a few things to take into consideration. One is that because of the brass pipe we use to hide all the wiring, we have to trim this side down, as we now have that brass pipe running along that area. So if you compare the walls, you can see one had to get shortened a bit. So, good to just keep that into consideration. For this pipe riding up and along the wall, it is traveling through the holes along the ceiling struts, the ceiling bulkheads. I'm blanking on the word. But for it, all you want to do to make it look nice and clean and go through is you just have to clip off a corner, take your side as to which one, run one side through, and then glue on the other side. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it since I got a pretty close cut on it, but I chose to cut this side, and based on where I cut, I can actually push it back through and hide my cut completely behind the circle. That's just how I chose to do mine. Feel free to cut either side. It's going to be an incredibly small detail, and if you put some paint on it, no one's going to notice it. And of course, the only other thing to glue on is this final pipe, which is just a simple choice of where you want to place it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and install the walls, which is probably just as simple as you can imagine. You simply take the wall, slide it in place, and it's now inside of your wheelhouse.
Alright, while Logan works on the detail parts of the wheelhouse, I am going to be working on some lighting circuits. So, what you need to grab is a 12 volt 2 amp adapter off of Amazon. They're super cheap. That's where you're going to get your power for your lighting system. Comes with obviously the power adapter, about 5 feet of cord, and a barrel connector on the end. And this particular one came with a whole bunch of different adapters on the other side. The other thing that I got, again off of Amazon, is the barrel connector that plugs into the power adapter. This is what's going to live in the boat. This is what's going to live in the stand. So what we want to start thinking about here is how you're going to get power into the boat. Now, the other thing that I've got coming that's not here yet that we will show is a 4-channel remote on-off switch. And that means basically we can have our lighting on 3 different channels. We can have interior lights, exterior lights, and attack lights. And then we can also have our propeller all on remote control. Super cool. And all of those guts are going to live inside. So the only thing we need to do is feed power to the boat. So we're going to grab this, and I'm going to put the links to all of these products in the description of this video so you know what to look for. We're going to run this as secretly as possible into the bottom of the stand on the back side of the boat. So typically Nautilus is displayed going left to right, the right side of the boat visible forward. But you can do whatever you want. You know, I don't know what your display situation looks like. With that being the case, we want the intake or the power for to be on the back side of the stand. So we're going to have it come in through here and up and just exit just before where it touches the boat. All right, let's take a look at this. This is where our power is going to be coming up, and we want it kind of hidden. So if we look underneath, look, there's a little square right there, right in between the ballast vents. So that is where we're going to drill in our power adapter. And the one that I have requires a 13 30-second bit. So that's what we're going to chuck up. We're going to lay this on its side. We're going to drill in right there. All right, here's the secret to this, guys, and we're going to be using this later when we install the LED lights. I pre-drilled a 3/16 hole, and now I've got the big bit in there, but I'm not going to go forward. I'm going backwards. All right, that's the secret. So you want to put it in nice and gentle pressure, and it'll eat its way through and make a nice hole. So there's the connection. Tricky to see. It'll be hiding in the back. What it did is got the spacing perfect. So plug it in, then run the cord, and then what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of thin CA and pin it at the corners so that it's all locked in, and all you'll see is the little cord coming out the bottom. So now it is time to start putting lights in the Nautilus, and you can go as crazy as you want. You can get extra lights from me if you want. You can get extra lights on Amazon. You can do whatever you want. You have enough lights, obviously, to do the Salon. We've already talked about that. The Salon blisters out here, the Salon floodlights. And what we're going to start with here right now, though, is the green attack lights. We're going to work on lighting for the Wheelhouse first before we go any further. So what I did, I drilled a 3/16 hole. Again, spin your bit backwards. You don't want to break this. We're going to push these lights down and spread them out so that they're shining kind of up at an angle. One on the dive levers and then one over here. We want uplighting because that lighting effect is going to look super cool when we turn it on. So I'm going to show you here in a moment what that looks like when you're done. What we're going to do, we're going to grab our rotary tool or a file and just flatten the tip of these LEDs so they turn from spotlights into floodlights. So there's the lights installed. I just used some gel CA to lock them in place. One this away, one this away. And now that they're in place, I'm going to pop out the Wheelhouse floor. And what you can do is grab a 9-volt battery. And this is your tester. Connect the positives and the negatives. Hold it on the battery and you can check your lights. And it's a good idea to do that before you install them and after you install them. I already checked these. They were both functional before I glued them in place. Now I'm going to go ahead and test them. There we go. Both of them are working. Both of them are shining in the right direction. Lots of illumination. That's going to look really, really cool. All right, we got some progressions going on with the lighting system here. A couple things I want to note. The floodlight receptacles were painted silver before I drilled them out and before I installed the LEDs. It's just going to make life a lot easier for you, not having to mask off the face of the LEDs. All of the tips of the LEDs have been ground flush to make them floodlights, like what we talked about before. And this is the lighting for the Wheelhouse. This is warm white, and the two floodlights are cool white, or cool white. The other thing that I did, and you don't have to do this, but I just used a little piece of brass tubing to gather up the wires so that they're going to be, reminiscent of a pipe in the Wheelhouse. So all I'm going to do now is secure that to the side of the Wheelhouse. The parts that Logan is working on over here are going to need to be modified to accommodate the lights and the wires. But for the most part, it should not be terrible to, grind them, notch them, whatever needs to happen. We'll show that to you here in a little bit. Floodlight receptacles have been drilled out also in the main hull. 1/8, and again, it's a reverse spin on that drill bit, people. 1/8 here, and I believe this was 13/64ths. Just a little bit over 5 mil, because these are 5 mil LEDs that are going to go here and here. So those are all set. We're going to be installing the LED lights in these holes here momentarily. All right, the trickiest LED lights to install in the model are going to be the big floodlights on the side of the Salon blister there. You're going to take your 5 mil LEDs, and there's going to be two things that you're going to do with that. First, you're going to grind the face of it, just like we've been doing with all of them. And then, using the sanding disc, you're going to remove the flange around the back. And I'm going to show you why here in a second. So now the LED is in the shape of a perfect cylinder, no flange or anything like that. Now the reason that we did that is because we're not going to be installing these from the back, we're going to be installing them from the front. And you just basically insert them in the hole, push the wires up. You can make sure that they're coming out in the top of the boat here, somewhere. Right here. That's them. And then just give that wire like a little English and press fit it into the socket. Once there, little thin CA and you're good. Topmost on each side, 1, 2, 3, 4, all get connected with this 4-way splitter. And this is also a little tricky. I find these little forceps work really good. You just grab the LEDs, push them into place. It does take a little bit of wiggling, and if you have a hard time with, you know, dexterity or vision, this could be challenging. I am going to say at this point, it's awfully amazing and a good idea that you watched through all of these videos in advance before you started putting it together, because it would be a really good idea to have installed all of these LEDs before the Salon was put in place. You may want to ensure that you put the LEDs in first. Can definitely do it. I'm doing it after the case, but it'll be a lot easier if you did it first. With the wheelhouse completed, it's time for the infamous windows. Your clear domes are hemispheres, but we don't need hemispheres, we just need domes. So these are the correct profile to go in the wheelhouse windows, if you look right here. So what we're going to end up doing is cutting these. Now, what I like to do is just use a hobby knife and about 1/4 of an inch up from the lip. Okay, I'm just going to put a mark. So you can now see it's been scored. And when you put this inside, you can look from the inside now, put that mark on the far side of the wheelhouse and align it to the edge. And now, with that aligned, you can take your hobby knife and mark on the other side of the window. And it doesn't matter if it's twisted or anything like that. A dome is a dome. It doesn't matter what portion of the hemisphere you take. Then, with that done, rotate the dome inside, align your marks, and put another mark close to you. And if you keep going around and around like that, you're going to end up with a perfect mark all around the perimeter of the dome there. It's going to allow you to cut the dome. And you're going to do that with the cutoff disc on your rotary tool, or if you've got one, I really prefer the bandsaw. It does a little bit better job. So you can see those marks on the dome. You're going to do that for both the wheelhouse and the Salon windows. You're going to use the same procedure both ways. So when you're done, you should end up with something that looks like this. Again, I'm a big fan of the bandsaw. I know not a lot of you guys have that, but there's no reason that you can't just go around it carefully with your rotary tool, okay? Now that that's done, we're going to go ahead and drop them in place, and the window should be flush with the inside face of the wheelhouse. Something like that. When you got all of that done, a little bit of thin CA, just a little tiny drip, and it'll flow through capillary action around the perimeter. Lock it down. Do not use too much, and for heaven's sakes, don't let it go down the face. All right, so I like to put a little pressure on the inside, and then just put that one little drop of thin. You don't need to go around the whole perimeter, just 2 spots, just to lock the window in. Once you're done, you got a little Google-eyed wheelhouse. Make sure that that kicks off okay, and we'll move on to the next step. All right, now we're going to be working on the rear window there. This is the clear acrylic sheet that you're given to utilize to cut it down. What you want to do is match up the corner, and of course, because it's see-through, you can actually mark out the other 3 corners, connect them with a straight edge, and you will then have the outline of your window. So you obviously want to go on the inside edge here, or it goes all the way around. This does not cut with scissors. Don't cut with scissors. It will shatter, okay? You need to cut it with your saw or rotary tool. So here's my cut piece. And of course, you guys knew this, there's protective plastic on here. So just peel that back, you see? And that'll expose the nice, clean, perfectly clear plastic. Drop it in place. And I would not actually glue this. I would use the outer frame to pin it in place. Once you get it in there, a little bit of thin CA, that'll lock it down. And then there's no chance that you get a glue goober on your nice, clean window. All right, there's my installed window, and now we're going to put our camera obscura hatch up on here. Now the little arms are fairly flexible, but it is a good idea to warm these up a little bit, just like we had done earlier on. Use your heat gun, warm them up just a little bit so that they will flex open, and then you can pinch it onto the hinge. If you don't and they snap, then it's just not good. Not a good thing. And here is a successfully installed hatch. This is, by the way, not a hatch for people. If you take a look at our little guys here, that would be really tight to get out. So this is called camera obscura hatching. You just open it up and stick your head out so you can see what's going down. Take your sightings with your compasses and all that fun stuff. So it has been a minute since we've worked on this. I've had travel and I've had other projects, but let's dive right back into the lighting. So what we've got here right now, I've got all of the leads labeled out as to what they are. We're starting to snake in and fit the wheelhouse now. The other thing I wanted to note, I was showing you guys the remote module. This is not required. This is, extra work, extra cost. I'll put the link if you guys want to use it. But you could easily just wire all of these into one circuit and just connect it to power. And when you plug it in, all the lights come on. Simplifies things, makes it a little cheaper, but I'm not doing that. We're gonna have the clicky clickies to make this thing pretty cool. So pulling all of the wires down, they're going to snake underneath the Salon to the back area where the module is going to live. So that's going to be, here-ish or here-ish, I don't know, something like that. And we'll get all the wires and everything bundled up, hidden in there. So now what we're going to do, we're going to put this thing down in place, secure it. Before we do that, I just want to note, now's a great time, give it a little rub on the inside. Clean out your windows, because once this is buttoned up, you're not going to do it again. Okay, I was putting this bad boy together, and bear in mind, this is the first time I've assembled this. There was some interference issues that I created. So let's take a look. So these seams need to end up looking like this, which is pretty nice, I have to say. Looks really good. The challenge that I was running into, and this was completely my fault, is I used glue to fill this area right here, and that prevented the inner lip of the lower hull to slip into place. So I just cleaned that out. It's not a big deal at all. And now it fits really, really good. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. But just bear in mind, when you're gluing your Salon in, steer clear of any of these lip areas. You want to glue on the inside of the hull. All right, it is at this point that it is your very last opportunity to double check the inside of the boat. Make sure all of your wires are bundled together, not going to get interfered with by anything. Make sure there's no big dust globules on the inside of your wheelhouse windows and all that sort of thing, because once you button it up, you're not going back in again. All I'm saying, this is your last chance to, avoid issues. Making sure that your wheelhouse is clean, that's the important thing, and that you got no wires trapped anywhere they don't need to be trapped. Okay, here is a really quick overview of how this lighting system is set up on this boat. So it's plugged in. The unit now has power, in theory. We have our 4-channel remote, and in theory, if I hit A, we should hear the propeller motor going. I don't have the propeller installed yet, but you'll hear it. There we go. And then we've got all of our lighting on 3 different channels. Tack lighting, interior lights, and our exterior floodlights. So, and you can obviously, you don't have to have just one or two. You could have all of them on, or some of them on, or whatever you want to do. Pretty cool system. Not necessary, as I said before, but if you want to take the time and make that all happen, it's actually not that bad. And here is just a quick view of how that seam on the bottom should look when everything has been put together. It actually looks a little worse than it actually is because I got black paint on the lip, and you can see that. But this is now ready for details. Logan is going to start putting those together, and we're going to talk about all that in the next video. All right, this is where we're going to end this chapter of the build blog off. In the next chapter, we are going to be putting on the final details of the hull, filling all of the seam lines, getting it all prepped, and then finally, I want some paint on it. Thank you all for your patience. I know you've been waiting a long time for this video. We're going as quick as we can, and trust me, the final product will absolutely be worth it. So, on behalf of myself, Bob Martin, the RCSubGuy, and Logan, who's helping me with the project, thank you for your patronage. Thank you for your interest. Have a great day, and we'll see ya in the next chapter.